Here we are at the second video for section 1.1, and continuing where we left off, we're ready for example number 9. Number 9 says graph the equation by plotting points, and so we get y equals negative x squared plus 1. Now whenever we need to plot points, we're going to come up with an xy chart. Start with the left hand side being x and the right hand side being y. And good values generally are -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And then what we just need to do is plug in each one of these and find the appropriate y values. So if we plug in -2 here, -2 squared is 4, -4 plus 1 is -3. Plugging in -1, -1 squared is 1, -1 plus 1 is 0. Plugging in 0, get 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 squared is 1, -1 plus 1 is 0, and finally 2 squared is 4, -4 plus 1 is -3. And so we have 5 very good points here. We can choose the point -2, -3, the point -1, 0, the point 0, 1, the point 1, 0, and the point 2, -3. And we do need to realize that this does make a nice parabola, and we need to draw this as a nice smooth parabola, making sure that this does not come out to be too sharp of a point. Example number 10 asks us to graph the equation using a graphing utility. And basically what we need to be aware of here is that it to be using, we have to make sure that we get y equals something, and it already is. Y equals -2x squared plus 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the y equals, and then I'm going to actually plug in what's there. Now negative is this point right here, -2. To get an x, I hit the xt theta, this button right here, and I need to square that, which is that button right there. So I've got -2x squared plus 9. Now one thing I want to make sure I do before I actually graph it is hit the window button and make sure that these are what are called the default window. The default window, x min, is -10. The x maximum, to begin with at least, is +10, and the x scale will be 1. And likewise the y minimum will be -10, +10, and 1. And then finally we can graph this and get the actual graph. And you will notice that there are some very important points. For example, this appears to be the point -2, 0, and this appears to be 2, 0. Unfortunately, these are not exactly right, because that's not exactly where 0 is, but it's really close. And likewise, this point up here will be the point 0.9. So when you're asked to graph using a graphing utility, then you need to find some very important points. Some of those points will be the intercept here and these intercepts here. Now how do we find the actual value of, say, this number right here? This one right here and this here are called zeros. So in order to calculate that, what we're going to do is we're going to find second and then calculate, which is this button right here. Now if you look, we are trying to find a 0, and so that's option number 2. Now it asks for what is the left bound. So I'm looking for this 0 right here, which says I need to move my cursor so that it's to the left of that particular spot. It doesn't have to be that far left, but it does have to be to the left. So there, we've got that. I hit enter. Then I need to do right of that 0. So there, I'm slightly to the right. I'm going to hit enter, and then finally it asks for a guess. Now on zeros, guesses are totally arbitrary, but you can try and get it closer if you want. It doesn't really matter. Or you can just press enter. And then notice it says 0. The 0 occurs at negative 2.12132 when y is equal to 0. That's why it's called a 0, because y is equal to 0. So that would be one spot that I'd want to see. I'd want to see this labeled as negative 2.120. Now coming over here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to calculate that 0. It asks for the left bound, so I need to get to the left of that. Okay, there I'm to the left. Then it asks for the right bound, so I need to go a little bit further to the right. And then I'm just going to guess right there. And it says 2.12132. And y value is 0. So that I would want to have labeled the point 2.120. Now if we look at this graph, it appears to be at a high spot right around here. And so what we might want to do, if we go to the calculation, if we look at the high spot, that would be maximum. And so we can do maximum, option number 4. And just like all the others, it says give me a left bound. In other words, go to the left of that spot. Go to the right of that spot. And then take a guess. And I'm just going to guess right where I was. And it says 1.1561 e to the negative 7. Well, this appears to have an x value of 0, and that's exactly what it is. The reason it didn't work out quite right is the fact that the calculator, when it's actually determining this, is doing a guessing and checking over and over and over again. So the answer here should be 0, 9, and that really shouldn't be a surprise because we thought that's exactly where it was at the value 0, 9. So some of the things that I'd want to see here. First of all, I'd want to see this shape, and then I'd want to see this as negative 2.120. This point labeled as 2.120, and this point labeled as 0, 9. Example number 11. Use the graphing utility to create a table that displays the points on the graph for the given equation. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to pull up our, well, we're going to create a table first off, an XY chart, and we're told the X values need to range from negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to use the graphing calculator to give us all these values. So what we will do is we will go to the y equals. Let's clear out everything for the first equation by hitting the clear button. And then we're going to do a negative 3x squared plus 10. Now we're not going to graph it, although we could, but instead I want to look at the table, which is second graph. Now we want to start with x equal negative 3, so I just need to move up a little bit. And there, notice I get negative 3 to be negative 17. Negative 2 is negative 2, negative 1 is 7, 0 is 10, 1 is 7, 2 is negative 2, and 3 is negative 17. So to answer what is being asked, all we need to do here is to fill in that information, which looks like this. And that answers the question for number 11. Examples 12 and 13 actually give graphs and ask us to list the intercepts. The intercepts simply mean use the graph, and wherever they cross the x-axis, that's what we need to write, or any axis, either the x or the y, that's what we need to write down. So number 12, it appears that it crosses the x-axis at negative pi over 2, 0. And it crosses again at pi over 2, 0. And then where it crosses the y-axis appears to be at the point 0, negative 4. And so those would be the three intercepts for number 12. Likewise for number 13, there appears to be four intercepts, three of them on the x-axis and one on the y. So doing the x-axis, I would get negative 5, 0. Then again at 1, 0. And then 3, 0, where it appears to cross the y-axis, and this is somewhat difficult to see, but if you look carefully, it is the point 0, 3. The final section of this group is we're going to graph the equation using a graphing utility, and using the graphing utility approximate the intercepts rounded to 2 decimal places. And it does say, if necessary, we're going to use the table feature to help establish the viewing window. So we might actually have to change our window from negative 10, 10, 1, negative 10, 10, 1 to something where we can actually view what we want to view. So we begin with number 14, y equals 3x squared minus 19. Since y is already solved for, we do not need to solve for y here. And so all we have to do is to plug it in. Y equals, I'm going to clear out what I had there before, and I want 3x squared minus 19. Then I'm actually going to graph it and see where it ends up. Okay, now I see that it goes here and here, but I seem to be missing something down here. So I need to change my window a little bit, and I realize my y minimum, I need to go further than negative 10. So I'm going to come down here and maybe, I don't know, let's try negative 20. See if that gives me what I want. Graph it again, and sure enough, that's where I get my crossing. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is find this 0 right here. So I do a second calculate. I'm going to calculate the 0. I want to get to the left of that. And then to the right. And then guess. And I get negative 2.520. So that's one of the x-intercepts. Then I want to calculate the other x-intercept, which we call it a 0. So I need to go to the left of that, the other one. So I've got that. And then need to go to the right of it. And then guess anywhere, halfway close, and notice it's 2.520. So there's my two x-intercepts. Now to find the minimum way down here, because the graph is at a low point, I'm going to do second calculate, and I want a minimum, which is option number 3. And once again, it asks what is, get to the left of it. It's somewhat covered up by the numbers, but that's okay. I'm finally to the left of it. Then I need to move the cursor to the right of it, and then just guess. And it appears this is 2.3058 e to the negative 6. This is a 0. 0, negative 19. And so with all that in mind, number 14 would be negative 2.520, 2.520, and 0, negative 19.